He was good. He was good at what he did, and that's what stumped us for years.
He was smart and ambitious.
I think he was always wanting a bigger score, bigger, 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 more money, more money.
He made millions using techniques police had never seen.
We knew that he was operating on a completely different level than what we are used to dealing with.
Find out how he did it next on Masterminds. Kansas City, Missouri is the prosperous heart of the Midwest. But in 2000, the city was hit by two major crime waves. It started with a series of break-ins at small businesses. But the thieves never took merchandise, only cash.
This rash of burglaries that we had starting in February of 2000 had not been experienced, so it was a situation that was quite unique.
I would say there was upwards of 60, 70 burglaries.
Then another spree began. Within a few months, credit unions all across the city were victimized.
Once the burglars entered into the credit union, they used power tools to gain access into the safe and take a large amount of money.
There's never been any other loss of this much currency in Kansas City history as far as I know. They've got 80,000 and 100,000.
Investigators soon discovered that the two crime waves were connected.
One common theme always came through, and that was the situation where the perpetrators were cutting the outside alarm lines and thereby defeating the alarms.
Telephone lines were cut. There was forced entry into the business. The video equipment was taken. Cameras were knocked off the wall.
Most importantly, we had a lack of physical evidence left at the scene. We thought that it was the same individuals responsible for the burglaries because of the way they were being committed.
But police quickly realized there were far too many crimes for just one group of burglars.
I mean, these places are getting broken into. You'll come to work, 4 or 5 more got broken into last night. It's disheartening.
Then in September 2002, the burglars netted their biggest score, striking the United Consumers Credit Union and making off with $250,000. Once again, they defeated the surveillance and alarm systems and left no evidence. But there was one big difference. They didn't just steal the contents of the safe, they stole the one-ton safe itself.
Taking a safe from a credit union is a whole nother level as far as being successful.
We had no fingerprints. There was no vehicles that were seen at the crime that could be linked back. I mean, there was just nothing. We just didn't even have one piece.
The police were baffled. The people of Kansas City were in an uproar.
We were responding to a problem that was becoming epidemic in the Kansas City area, and people wanted something done.
It was happening all the time. It would seem like there was no end in sight. We didn't know if it was one big organization or several smaller organizations, but we knew we had a big problem, and the problem had just gotten a lot bigger.
The mastermind responsible for this big problem was a small-time crook who created Kansas City's most sophisticated criminal organization. Aaron Rodgers stole over $3 million. The question is, how did he do it? Aaron Rodgers is the mastermind behind Kansas City's most amazing burglary spree. Raised on the poor northeast side of town, he quickly learned the code of the street.
Nobody likes to snitch on one another. If somebody's in a jam, they tend to help each other out. If they see an opportunity, they take it.
The neighborhood watch out for each other. However, most of that is for watching for the police.
Rodgers begins his criminal career as a typical Northeast Side petty thief.
He was surrounded by family members that were involved in crime, and early on, Aaron took that path of crime also.
Aaron started out petty crimes such as car thefts, breaking into cars, burglaries, home burglaries,
In 1997, he lands in jail. He hooks up with James Yoakum, another small-time thief he knows from the neighborhood.
I think they were truly best friends, and they hung out with each other all the time, and I feel like they really trusted each other.
They discovered that they had common goals as far as what they wanted to do with their criminal activity.
Together, they decide to reach for the top. Aaron will lead, and James will be his loyal lieutenant.
And rather than going out and burglarizing small places, burglarize a big place, and each of them get $40,000 or $50,000 apiece.
As soon as Rogers gets out, he assembles a team.
Aaron knew who to choose. He chose his friends. He chose people that were close to him, that were involved in criminal activity.
Most importantly is that Aaron trusts these guys. You don't snitch on each other. That is their motto.
He was the leader through and through, and he had their respect and their loyalty.
His immediate goal is to whip this group of petty thieves into a burglary dream team. But to pull big jobs, Aaron realizes he has to acquire the skills of a master craftsman. Most importantly, he needs someone who can teach him how to defeat alarm systems.
Charles Miller grew up with Aaron Rodgers. He had a job installing alarms. That's why Aaron befriended him again, because he knew he could use Charles Miller.
Mr. Miller did install an alarm system at Mr. Rogers' residence. A substantial amount of discussion took place as far as how these alarms worked.
Now armed with his new skills, Rogers trains his team. He drives them hard until they're a tight-knit unit. Aaron calls them the A-Team. They call themselves the 9th Street Dogs.
Their mentality is that they're the wolves. They're going to prey on people.
Rogers now unleashes his team to pull off a spree of break-ins at retail businesses.
It was Family Dollar type stores, convenience stores, restaurants that were closed at night, but it was always similar type businesses.
Word of Aaron's success spreads to the criminals on the Northeast Side. They flock to him, looking for a piece of the action. He creates a burglary B team with a promise they can join the 9th Street Dogs if they do well.
His role was a leader. He chose the time, he chose the place, he chose the people that was going to be committing the crime, he chose the assignments they were going to have, he called all the shots.
Aaron himself never goes on any jobs with the B team, but he always gets a cut of the action.
Now, what his fee was, he got a certain portion of that given to him for his time and trouble. So he took a management role in this group of people.
Now with over 30 people working for him, Aaron Rodgers is the king of Kansas City crime.
Mr. Rogers, with his knowledge of how to complete a burglary and organize the group, was definitely responsible for a large portion of the criminal activity that was going on.
With the B team taking care of the small jobs, Aaron is ready to take the 9th Street Dogs to the next level. He targets credit unions.
He knew that it was a more lucrative type of situation if you moved up from a business to a financial institution.
I think that Aaron Rodgers and his group were always wanting a bigger score, bigger, more money.
Aaron would seek out credit unions that had, he believed, not as sophisticated of an alarm system as some of the larger credit unions.
He would not go ahead and do something if he thought the risk was going to outweigh the possible gain.
Rogers and his gang quickly become expert at breaking into safes.
Entry into the safes by the group was made with concrete saws, hacksaws, drill sets, whatever type of tool they thought they were going to need.
Police are helpless to stop him as he pulls over 40 jobs at small credit unions. Then, in September 2002, Rogers plans their biggest job yet at the United Consumers Credit Union.
That particular credit union is located in a desolate, isolated part of town, and after 5 o'clock, there is not a single soul down in that area. Aaron went into the bank before and checked any surveillance and gained information about the job.
Aaron realizes United Consumers has more security than the smaller credit unions. He checks to see where the video equipment is set up and where the cameras are located. He notes when cash is delivered.
His main mission was to find out what type of safe it was and what types of tools might be necessary to defeat the safe. Before they went out, they had briefings, and Aaron went through a checklist and gave out an assignment to each person. Each person knew, I'm going to be the lookout, or I'm going to be going inside, I'm going to be responsible for this or that.
They trusted his opinion, they trusted what he said, how it should be done.
At midnight, the operation begins. Step 1. Aaron makes sure they have untraceable transportation.
They would steal those vehicles, that way they couldn't be linked back to them.
Step 2. He goes shopping for untraceable tools.
They would break into a tool rental place and take whatever they needed. There's power tools, there's pry bars, everything you can imagine right there for them.
Now fully equipped, they attack the target.
Rogers disabled the lines in this particular burglary on the telephone alarm lines on the outside of the credit union.
As soon as the lines are cut, he and the gang get out of sight.
They leave the area and set up surveillance on the business, wait for a police response.
Police officers came around, noticed that the bank had not been burglarized or no open doors, open windows. They left. They notify the alarm company, and the alarm company puts that down as a false alarm.
With the alarm system and the police neutralized, Rogers is now ready to break in.
With everyone thinking that there was a false alarm there, you could bust in a window, you could set it on fire, and it's not going to notify the alarm company because those wires have been cut.
But to ensure he doesn't alert anyone who stumbles upon the crime scene, Rogers hides all signs of a forced entry.
So within a few minutes, they're inside of the bank once the decision by Aaron's made to go forward.
The first priority is to eliminate all video evidence.
Once they get into the building, they can immediately go to that area where the surveillance system is maintained. The surveillance tape was taken, and the electronics in the surveillance room were disabled as well.
Outside, his second-in-command, James Yoakum, acts as lookout.
The group utilized walkie-talkies so they could communicate with each other inside and outside.
First, their group would have to get into that vault, and that's where they would use the concrete saw.
After an hour of sawing, they're into the vault. The gang has broken into dozens of safes, but this one's made of tougher steel. It resists their diamond-tipped drill bit.
It was taking a long time, and it was very difficult work.
Aaron was getting frustrated it was taking so long that they couldn't do it right. He himself tried to cut into the safe.
Using an oxyacetylene torch, Rogers starts making progress, but it's too slow. It's now 5 a.m., and they've got to get out before dawn.
They realized that they're not going to be able to open the safe, so Aaron made the decision, we're not leaving here without this.
With only 1 hour till daybreak, he makes a bold move.
He went, burglarized an equipment store, and got a big dolly.
It's 6 a.m. With only a half hour left until dawn, the gang starts to pry up the 2,000-pound safe.
Safes are bolted to the ground, and it would take a lot of strength and a pretty big crowbar to get it actually off of the concrete that it's bolted to.
They went in, pried that safe off the ground, and took that on the dolly out to their truck.
As the truck speeds away from the bank, Aaron and his team have all the time they need to open the safe.
Inside the truck, they take their glow torches and cut into that safe.
They score $250,000.
That's an enormous amount of money for someone to take from a basic burglary.
We hit a big lick. That was their term they'd always use. We hit a big lick.
Aaron Rogers and his gang have pulled off another perfect crime, but his most loyal gang member will soon threaten to bring his massive operation crashing down. Aaron Rodgers has masterminded Kansas City's biggest bank heist. The next morning, local cops and the FBI comb the crime scene for clues.
We had very little physical evidence. We had some footprints, but definitely we never got any fingerprints. So it was frustrating, and the hardest part was narrowing our focus down on who is our targets of this investigation.
My impression from investigating this was that it was a group that was very tightly knit and that was probably not from Kansas City. We thought that because we were not generating leads.
There was no informants talking. They were taking all evidence of the crime with them, so we knew that they were operating on a completely different level.
But then the police get a huge break when Aaron Rodgers' lieutenant, James Yoakum, is busted for a job he's pulled with the B team.
This was explained to him that how long you're going to go to jail, is a reflection of your cooperation.
Authorities offer him a deal, but Yoakum refuses to talk.
It just took us weeks and weeks to finally draw the information out from him.
And at which time he provided information of who was doing the credit union burglaries. Then he mentioned Aaron Rodgers' name.
So we learned through James that Aaron Rodgers actually was the ringleader. So that was really our big break.
Yoakum eventually reveals details about Rodgers and his gang. But to make an arrest, the cops need more than the word of an informant.
We made a decision to ask for his bond to be reduced from $30,000 to $10,000. He was able to make that bond. He was able to get out, and he was going to work for us. He was going to talk to Aaron. He was going to try to infiltrate this group again.
But there's a problem.
Aaron Rodgers was immediately suspicious as to why Mr. Yoakum had been mysteriously and suddenly released. Mr. Rodgers strongly suspected that Mr. Yoakum was acting as an informant for some police agency.
Yoakum has violated the code of the Northeast Side.
There's a saying over there that snitches are like bitches that end up in ditches. So that's the atmosphere that some of these young men have been raised around. You don't cooperate with law enforcement. We figured out quickly that Aaron Rodgers was never going to allow James Yoakum back into the organization. He was too smart. He had very good instincts.
With his best friend now working for the police, Rodgers fears his days as Kansas City's premier bank burglar are coming to an end.
And he knew that at some point, the FBI and the police were going to be after him. He wanted to get as much money as quickly as he could and flee.
I'm going to do this last big lick and get out of Kansas City.
To get away, Aaron needs $250,000. One last big score. He targets the richest, most secure bank in the city. While Rodgers acts as lookout, gang members Richard Morse and Daniel Pitts attempt to break in. But they run into a major problem.
This was a bank with a very extensive vault. They tried and tried, they could not cut into it.
The job is taking too long. Rodgers realizes they won't get into the vault before daybreak.
They didn't have the right tools. It was a very sophisticated vault system. It was much more difficult to get into than what they had been faced with before.
Aaron decided that they weren't going to leave empty-handed. If nothing else, they'll pry the ATM that was right on the drive-through outside of the bank. They'll pry that off the ground, which would be easy, throw that in the back of the truck, and the ATMs will still oftentimes have $30,000, $40,000 in it.
So when they go to the ATM machine, they begin prying on the ATM machine, not realizing that it has an alarm. So the police are notified, they respond. Aaron is sitting in the red Blazer watching as a lookout, and 2 patrol cars come flying over the hill en route to the scene of the alarm call. Aaron grabs the 2-way walkie-talkie and yells, "Police," 3 times, "Police, police, police."
So Aaron disappears and is no longer visible from the district car standpoint because they're dealing with this issue now of chasing Mr. Pitts and Mr. Morse.
Daniel Pitts happens to run into a field, and he lays down and begins to hide. They chased him across the field in a police car. They eventually lost sight of him for a second.
After they get out of their police car and attempt to gain a visual, they discover that they've run over Mr. Pitts, who was basically trying to hide from the police in this tall grass.
He had a head laceration and some injuries to his shoulder. He was the only one that was captured. The morning that Daniel Pitts was arrested, we knew that word would be out with the rest of them. So our goal at that time was to try and arrest every one of the members of the crew that was committing these crimes.
Within a week, all members of the 9th Street Dogs and the B Team are in custody.
They all started out as being big talkers. I'm not coming in, I'm not going to snitch on each other, I'm not going to cooperate, and they all, for the most part, all ended up cooperating. Aaron immediately fled. He knew we were going to be coming after him.
After a 3-year reign as Kansas City's top thief, Aaron Rodgers is now a hunted man.
He did a really good job of avoiding us. I mean, we put a lot of pressure on him, but we never did capture him.
He spends months on the run, but the chase wears him down.
No money, his face on the news all the time. Our whole squad is looking for him.
I think Aaron Rodgers knew that it was just going to be a matter of time before he was arrested.
We contacted his family and pleaded with his family to reach out to him to turn himself in.
His father talked to Aaron, and he told Aaron that sooner or later, you need to turn yourself in.
After 2 more months eluding police, the king of Kansas City crime has had enough. He drives downtown to the FBI office.
I think Aaron Rodgers came in because it was inevitable that he would be taken into custody one way or another. And I think that he wanted to do it on his terms when he was ready to do it.
He was given an opportunity to snitch on all his friends like they had snitched on him. He never gave situations about any of the other individuals or what their roles were. He stayed the leader the whole way through.
In January of 2004, Aaron Rodgers pleads guilty to 13 counts of burglary and is sentenced to 7 years in prison.
I think that Aaron was a mastermind because of the thought process and the physical work and the mental work that he had to go through to make these jobs successful. I cannot remember in my 19 years of being a police officer an organization that was working in Kansas City, at least, that was as sophisticated as this.
Aaron was good. He was good at what he did. That's what stumped us for years.
Oh,